Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar, which is on license auditing for Oracle ERP. We're focusing particularly today on Jody Edwards and how to look at your license, look at your usage. In particular, this is about making sure you're compliant with your Oracle license and that Oracle licensing don't ring you up and tell you that you've got a problem. Yes, I know the CIO who had that call and ended up paying $2 million. So be aware of it. All right. A brief webinar today. If you've got any questions, just key them into the question box, chat box. But the main issue is to get this point over to you in just on 20 minutes so you can get on with your day. What are our objectives? Very straightforward, I think. I'm going to show you how just take 30 minutes of your time to set up a license audit. Most of these are users of our license auditing service now acquire this as part of a managed service. Our service provider will set the license audit up such that they run it for you once a year. So you don't even need to remember you're paying the license to use it, but you don't even need to remember to run it. They'll run it for you. But the key point is to enable you to understand your license. I am going to give you a couple of clues to the key issues here, but obviously we're not lawyers. Our job is not to advise you on the legal circumstance. It is up to you in most of your instances to talk to your lawyers, but we'll give you the facts that you can take to them to understand it. You really don't want to hear any more about me, I'm sure, but Preston, do you want to give everybody a 1-minute thumbnail of what you're all about?
Thanks very much, Mike. My name's Preston Leftwich. I've actually worked in JD Edwards as a functional consultant doing security and working very closely with this type of issue for the last 20 years or so. I live in Kansas City, right in the middle of the country, and after using the tools here at QSoft for the last 5 or 6 years, I joined the team about a year ago.
And he still supports the Chiefs and Norwich City. I'm sorry, mate, but
what can you do?
Yeah, you're born to these things, I know. So what are we talking about today? We're going to talk about your Oracle license. We're going to talk about how to understand your Oracle license in specific. On the next slide, I'll give you one very important issue you need to bear in mind. But the way that the audit runs is that there's no technical requirements. So it takes a little bit of technical effort, perhaps an hour's work to set it up the first time. Preston will walk you through that. But the main issue is to get, certainly within a short period of time, perhaps an hour, perhaps a couple of hours, depending on your complexities of your system, size of your system. The report you'll get will show you usage by module. Very important to look at it down to the SKU level, i.e. breaking down right below the module level, and look at which modules are compliant, non-compliant, etc. But the overall problem that most people do not take into account is this final one, that your licensing is not just about who has accessed a module over the last 12 months is the normal period. You can cut down the period if you like, but that's what we would normally run it as. But secondly is who has access. And the reason for this is if you look at the Oracle standard terms, which have been in existence for 6 or 8 years, the standard terms say it has this phrase: an application user is defined as an individual authorized by you, the company, to use the license application programs which are installed, regardless of whether they've actually used it. All right. Now, if you take this phrase, this clause, as the legal requirement, what this means is that if the user A actually has access to the inventory module, but hasn't actually used it because they're not in that part of the business, you need a license for them. So what we give you is both who has accessed each module and who has security clearance, security access to be able to use that module. you can then take that to your lawyers and define it. Our view is that you should secure out these users who have access and haven't been accessing it, so that you're not don't have any licensing problems, and secondly, of course, it will help a great deal with cutting down on your fraud risks, etc. And the security is something that we can help you with. I will tell you, we've just run a large audit for a very large user with something like 7,000 users, and around about half of their users fall into this category. Are they going to buy from Oracle 7,000 users or 3,500 users? I know which of those two I would prefer, and I know that every lawyer I've spoken to say the only answer to that, if you want to run with 3,500, is to cut down the access for the others. So use cases, well, yes, if you're coming up to a negotiation, whether this is because you have rolled out or are rolling out to a new user base, perhaps you bought a company, or you've got a new subsidiary rolling into JD Edwards usage, you need to be very careful and look at this. And of course, the other side of the coin is they have the right to ring you up any day and say, what is your access? We need to check it. They do not have access. They do not have a legal right, generally speaking, to come on site and inspect your data themselves, but you have to make that data available to them. And it's very, very difficult to get this information, particularly when you take into account the access issue that I've just run you through. You do need to check this against your contract. There are anomalies, of course. We all know that JD Edwards sold these systems. If you've been using JD Edwards for 20 years, you might have some different types of license. You might have an enterprise license. It might there was a period when it was based on revenue, and you might have gone for a CAS bundling, which is where you've bought a complex set of modules for a price, etc. And if you're in, some of the what I say to every user is you're best to know exactly what your usage is and whether you've got any problems with your security access. But there are some areas, particularly in enterprise licensing, if you're able to take that forward, all right, where perhaps you don't need to worry too much about your user count. But believe me, if you start trying to change your licensing for a new subsidiary, etc., as I said, they're going to force you off enterprise licensing. They do not do enterprise licensing in real terms any longer, and therefore you're going to be coming into these areas that I've talked about, particularly this access issue. So what we're aiming to do in all these instances is give you the data you need. What is it? Well, we use a tool that we have developed called the Q Cloud. It's software as a service. It's a web service, if you like. And what we do is we install a small Java agent on any device that can see your database. It could be on a laptop accessing your JD Edwards database in your data center, or of course it could be in the cloud somewhere. It makes no difference. Once we've installed that, you kick off the access, and it sends the data up to the cloud. There is no business data going up here. We are not taking any personal data. We are just creating usage data and taking that up to the cloud. And then when the analysis is complete, you'll get a link to the results, which Preston is going to show you now. So Preston, this is your moment of glory. This is your what you've been waiting for. And shall we hand over the spotlight to you, and please show these good folks exactly how this works.
Will do. Thank you, Mike. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. I'm going to walk through what you kind of get to after you've installed the Java agent. We've extracted the data from your system. Again, to reiterate what Mike has said earlier, we're taking the last columns of the data to get things like roles and user counts and product counts and system code information, time date stamps based on the 3, 6, 9, 12 months of evaluation that you choose to do. So we're not looking at the business data itself. We're not looking at item numbers or quantities or dollar values. We're simply looking at tables that hit that category that gives you what system code you're in, and inventory, finance, GL. And we're bringing that data up into the cloud, and we're going to run our algorithms on it to give you kind of the feedback that goes along with that data. When you log in, you'll get a tenant ID and a password. You can have as many of those as you'd like if you have other people that want to look at this data as well. We provide a dashboard that sort of gives you two different spins on the data. If you've worked with us before, you'll recognize one of the views here in a moment. The new view here is to kind of give that sort of overview. Lets you look at the actual breakdown of all the modules across your user counts. What it also does is it lets you kind of get the data out into the system to get that overview and understand what part of the business you need to look at in totality, right? It gives you that breakdown, that view of data so that you can actually focus your attention if you need to talk to business users within each one of the departments or divisions. If you click on one, it's interactive. It'll actually drive you down from the actual main suite down into the actual level of the SKU levels to deal with the CRM foundations, for example, or sales order management. It'll let you drill into that data. And as you come back out with that, you can actually jump right from here into the transaction sets to see what types of transactions are happening within that particular suite of information. This is actually just sort of a graphical representation. The details come within that sort of what we've used before, that tabular view, which gives you the actual product suite. And then within each one of those product suites gives you the actual modules that you've been using. One of the things that our design does is give you not only the actual header suite so that you know within what modules you're using that larger suite of access, it actually gives you two different kinds of data within the system. One set of data is the actual users with access. This goes back to what Mike was talking about with the security being given to a group of people. That is where you're liable for the license. These are the users that have been given security and role security, which is what Oracle will use to evaluate your licenseship. This is the people that you'll have that have access based on a role. We'll list the roles out for you. We'll give you the data and the user IDs so that you'll see who is accessed via what roles to get access to your system. Now, all doors open, that means you're going to have everybody and everything, and you'll see that very clearly through our system. We'll demonstrate that to you so you know that you have some cleanup you can do to try to reduce your license counts. You can extract that straight to Excel here with a quick extract button. All of these reports, all of these subsets of data will extract to Excel, as well as up at the lower, from the lower side up to the higher level into the actual suite itself. You can come back up here and take the entire thing out to Excel with the click of a button. That lets you then take out the data, review it in a more close manner to make decisions about what you want to do. And then within the actual records itself, as you look through the different sets of SKUs that you have, one of the things that you can do is actually pull in the actual records for the people who have transactions. And that's the other side. This is the part that we give you that Oracle doesn't get to have, that lets you say, okay, I have given a number of people access to the system. Are there people, what's my actual usage in the system? How many people are actually transacting in those files that qualify as being a part of the module, so that you can make a decision that if you've given 100 users access to the system and only 40 of them are actually doing transactions over a period of time, 12 months, for example, that you know that you're over licensed, and that will then in turn save you money. Much to the chagrin of Oracle, I'm sure, but that's the idea, is that you can use, this is what they're going to evaluate, and reality can sit here in this column. We actually then have a column that we're working on in a future development here, which will actually take your license counts into consideration so that you have an overall picture of what you've been licensed for, what the users that have access to the system what Oracle will consider for licensing, and then you can actually see what you really could actually whittle down your licenseship down to in that grouping, hopefully to save you some money. The actual user details that go along with that will actually break out the data for you so that you'll have a more clear definition of all the data. These are all the users that have access in the system, what their actual usernames are, and then what the actual groupings with them. specific to their user ID, what they have access to. Again, quick access here to drop those details out into Excel so that you can actually do further review and refinement of those users in the system. We just finished a license audit for a global company across 7 different companies in 5 different continents. Those people use a lot of this information to whittle down users that cross across the country, across all of the business units that are out there in the system to make those decisions and work on whether or not they actually need that sort of global access and bring those user counts down into a usable manner. As you see here, all doors open up at the top. That will give you access to know the all doors open. For those that have all doors open in the system, that will actually demonstrate to you that if you're only transacting in certain groups of places, that will mean a lot to you going forward, because all doors open is what Oracle will see, and they'll ask you for a license for each one of those users that have all doors open. So that's a nice warning sign, gives you sort of that bigger picture of what your system looks like. We also provide reports for you as well. The final audit report is a PDF document that will actually provide you the licensing information, give you the user counts in sort of that summary look, both by suite and by module. And then additional to that, we'll give you the spreadsheet that works out the general overall big picture of how things are done with both the transacted users, the transaction counts with the system. With that in mind, that's sort of the overview of the application and the licensing thing. We actually have we'll hold this data in as long as you're part of our group. This is your data to keep and work with. We'll allow you to upload data as well to store any documents you'd like to support that and to work with that going forward. Possibly if you'd like to have this be a central repository for contract negotiations and so forth, you can certainly store it. This is all encrypted up in the cloud. So in a general statement about the product and how it works, it is using your trailing data in your files just to identify that file has been hit and when it has been hit within that time frame, and it is then summarized in an overview status, and then you can certainly drill down at your leisure to look at the details within both SKU and module.
Thank you, Preston. That was great. Folks, let me just finish this off for you. And in summary, one thing that people always ask us is security. Obviously, we are a security business, so we're very conscious that we need to encrypt the data, and we use triple DES, the same as Oracle. So the Q Cloud itself that you've seen there in its licensing mode, we also make this available as a service for segregation of duties and auditing security. That's another service that we can talk to you about, but beyond what we've got for you today. A couple of quotes from customers. I think one of the things that gives me more pleasure than anything else is to make sure that we ensure that our clients are saving their money, all right? And yes, we've got plenty of clients who will actually refer to on that basis. But that's about all we've got time for. But if you want any further details, do let us know. That's the email address you can get us on. What we tried to show you today is how you can look at your license usage on your Oracle J.D. Edwards system, see what you're actually using, but perhaps just as important, who has access that are not actually accessing those, not actually transacting in those modules, and therefore come to a logical judgment as to what you actually need to license from Oracle. Very easy to set up. It just takes an hour to set up, and then we can work with you and help you interpret the results. So let us know if you'd like further details. We'd be pleased to hear from you. But I think that's about all we've got time for today. So I'd like to say thank you for attending, and have a good rest of your day. All the best.